I grew up in an environment where it was fairly common to hear uh, gunshots and ambulances and police officers and fights going on outside. So part of what my mother did, and she was really trying her best in terms of taking care of us, was isolating us and keeping us away from everything that went on outside. A lot of that meant that I would be upstairs in this public housing. It's a 13-story building where there were, if you can imagine, 10 apartments on each floor, 13 stories. It was just a lot of people in boxes on top of each other. You would hear things through the walls. And occasionally I would sneak into my mother's closet and look through her clothing, or look through her makeup and sort of lock myself in the bathroom and play with it. And I think that really started sort of the performance in a way. In a lot of ways it was sort of silent. Obviously I couldn't make any noise because my family would find out. And I couldn't be too extreme because I would stand out, and then, especially in school. So a lot of it was done in sort of isolation. It's an absolute sort of healing process. I think for me it's a way to understand and redefine a lot of my experiences from childhood. If it does enough for me that it causes, like performance and art, if it does enough for me that it causes me to question who I am and what I'm doing in life in general, then I would love to introduce that to the rest of the world. Well, I've titled it Death of a Legend, and the title comes from the 70s documentary of based on wolves. It was created to almost humanize wolves so that they wouldn't seem to be these scary creatures that are in nursery rhymes and things that will eat you. So it created the friendly face of a wolf. And that's where the definition comes from. But I've been working on a costume that's sort of a prison uniform orange. It's almost puppet-like. It's another thing. A lot of the stuff I include or do is almost friendly. It's not gruesome. So I've created this sort of almost puppet-like costume. And living like almost like a caged animal, and only being given certain types of a small amount of food. And I'm just sort of leaving it there, just kind of putting a big question mark on what I'm going to do in there. It'll certainly be entertaining. When I heard the idea, I thought, oh, well, that's not going to work with me. I'm just not the type of person to exist in a pack. I'm just not that type. But in that process, I've like realized that if I were to sort of get theoretical about it, like, you know, we're all in humanity, we're all a community, and sometimes you have to be part of the pack, even when you don't want to. In a lot of ways, it can be interpreted as my own personal ritual to my own personal God, a process to find that God and find that divine figure, absolutely. It's almost a conversation. A form of asking for to be taken over, for possibly the universe to do what they will with me, and just allowing myself to sort of be silent and allow for whatever that might be coming in to happen. Yeah, absolutely. If you were to define ritual that way, then that's probably about right. For me, it's more of a commentary on the class system and how the poorest class exists so that we could all have our luxuries. So I wanted to replicate that feeling in a much more literal term, which means that I'll be living in a box for a day and being supplied a certain amount of food. And not able to get out of that. The experience now of going back, because my mother still lives there, of going back to that housing is I can see 2 or 3 generations later of people that I grew up with that are still there, and a lot of things have never changed. That's my beginning of the process. I'd like for people almost not to know. There's this idea of being in an enclosed space where you're feeling that you can't move forward or back. You're a victim of your environment, that I think that lots of people will be able to identify. There's a quote that Ryan Tricardin says. He says that technology and all these mediums are an extension of our humanity, and the sooner we realize that, the happier the world will be. So part of that is me trying to project what I'm doing as far as possible.